Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. You have other things to do. We have a standard format on these calls. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for the potential reset of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the situation as it exists today in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or the purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we think is most relevant. And certainly the most relevant piece of information would be the potential window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. We continue to believe that the most plausible date for the reinstitution would be January of 2021. And inasmuch as we're just about into October, we're only talking about 3 months. But there is a possible scenario for the the reinstitution of the dinar in country in the month of October. So let's talk a little bit about the situation and why that might be the case. As we speak, Iraq is exploring a number of options with regard to balancing their 2020 budget deficit. Their primary concern, of course, is the payment of salaries for the last quarter of the year. They essentially have three options. Option one would be to continue to spend down the U.S. dollar reserves that's held by the Central Bank of Iraq. That's really not a good idea because they simply cannot function without either a viable national currency or a reserve currency. So the continued use of the U.S. dollar reserves is probably not a good option. The second option would be to continue to borrow money. Now, the World Trade Organization and the IMF are against lending Iraq any additional funds. If they do, the loans would be extremely draconian. They'd be technically classified as austerity loans, and the Iraqi government would probably reject that. Those loans would also be conditioned upon the government's release of their economic and financial paper, which actually should be available in the next couple of weeks. So the only third and viable option at this point would be the reinstitution of their currency. They could utilize their currency domestically. They'd be able to substantially increase international trade. Now, there are some obstacles right now that make it a little difficult for the reinstitution to happen in October, although, again, it is a possibility. First, they need to initiate the Citizen Re-Education Program. Now, that is a program that they said should run for at least 30 days before the reinstitution of their currency. But that's not a hard and fast number. So they could initiate the re-education program now or even a week or 2 weeks from now and still reinstitute within a matter of a couple of weeks, which would still leave us into October. The second is they're going to need the release of the U.S. OFAC sanctions. And this is something that the United States government is prepared to do on the condition that they proceed with basically expelling the Iraqi militias and releasing the files having to do with the corrupt Iraqi officials, both of which are in progress. Now, the release of the corruption files has begun. Arrests of some of the low-level corrupt officials have occurred, and there have been governmental meetings to discuss proceeding with the release of the remaining files and some arrests of some rather higher-ranking officials. Now, not surprisingly, Nouri al-Maliki, head of the State of Law Party, and Mustafa al-Amiri, head of the al-Fatah Party, have been boycotting these meetings, and they recently took a trip to Iran. Now, it would seem to me that they see the writing on the wall. There's going to be an election in June. They're not able to influence al-Kazemi, the current Prime Minister designate, because he's already announced he's not planning to run for re-election. So they can't bribe him and they can't threaten him. They also know that if they lose in June, they will also lose their protections, their immunity. So I think there's a distinct possibility that Maliki and Amiri may be bailing from Iraq in the next 6 months. But whether they do or not, they've basically been defanged. The nonsense that's been going on for nearly a decade has all come to a screeching halt. So the only thing that remains for these two individuals is whether they stay in the country and risk arrest or whether they flee the country. That's a toss-up. The last issue has to do with national unity, and that involves the discussions going on between the Baghdad government and Kurdistan, the semi-autonomous province within Iraq. The three issues that are being resolved, my understanding is that they're moving along pretty well. First, absolute implementation of Article 140 of the Constitution, implementation and final tweaks to the language regarding the oil and gas law, which affects distributions to Kurdistan, and Kurdistan's autonomy with regard to the border crossings in their province. So everything is moving, as I said, to the most plausible date of a reinstitution of January of 2021. But again, there does remain the possibility of this happening in October. Now, there's one other reason, in my opinion, why October is a possibility. It's got to do with the United States elections. Despite all of the nonsense going on in our country, the COVID, the street riots, the pending election, Donald Trump has been able to negotiate some very important peace agreements in the Middle East. So what that tells us is he's doing a lot of things behind the scenes that we may not be aware of. I think there's a distinct possibility that the United States, the World Trade Organization, and the IMF might go ahead and flip the switch and give the Central Bank of Iraq the go-ahead to reinstitute their currency before the election. And, of course, if that were to happen, aside from the fact that it would be very good for Dinarians such as ourselves, but from just a purely political standpoint, it would be the best thing that could happen for a number of reasons. We have a lot of people that are suffering because of the shutdown due to COVID. Now we have a lot of individuals, millions in fact, that will become overnight millionaires, and they're certainly not going to be interested in voting for bigger government, higher taxes, and all that nonsense. So I'll just say it one more time in conclusion. We're still looking at January of 2021 as the most plausible date for the reinstitution. Again, with the possibility of a surprise reinstitution in October. Now, that being the case, and I've been doing this for 10 years, but I can say with some confidence now, for those of you that may not be aware of what they need to do prior to the revaluation of these currencies, you mercifully may be running out of time. Most Dinarians are not wealthy individuals. They're hardworking Americans who for the first time will be dealing with a rather substantial amount of money that's coming into their possession literally overnight. So to that end, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. It is a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and hopefully some of these other currencies. Now, there is a specific reason why Trusts Unlimited has established a package of irrevocable trusts. Very simply because it's the best bulletproof asset protection available domestically. Now, there are other entities one can establish to provide some level of asset protection. For example, some individuals have established LLCs or sub-S corporations. They do provide some level of asset protection by primarily dividing business assets from personal assets. The problem here is twofold. First, possession of these currencies is a personal asset. And second, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations owned in the majority by either one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So the LLC and the sub-S corporation are not going to be appropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established revocable trusts, which are sometimes referred to as living or loving trusts. And these trusts can exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and in some cases substantially reduce and even eliminate the federal estate tax. But revocable or living or loving trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection. So they're going to be inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established single irrevocable trusts, and that does provide the best asset protection relative to the entities I just described. But there's an inherent flaw even in a single irrevocable trust, and it is this. If any asset within the trust is involved in civil litigation, that would drag all of your other assets and net worth into that litigation as well, because they're all owned by that same one entity. The solution is an establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, which is the only entity or package entity that can protect you both pre- and post-RV. But the rub is the package must be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. And I'm going to give you the reasons why. First, by establishing this trust package, you will preserve both pre- and post-RV your privacy and your anonymity, because assets held within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. Now, if you are in possession, direct possession of these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's come along at the precise time these currencies are revalued, and there's many more much important things you'd rather be dealing with. And lastly, the cost of a 6-year audit would probably be more than the cost of our asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your pre-RV asset protection trust is legally in force and you have assigned your currencies on paper to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for 3 reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if the taxable event of this revaluation were to occur within a sophisticated trust package such as ours. Second, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event potentially within the trust is the revaluation itself. And third, and this is the one that we are currently working on, Section 643B of the Internal Revenue Code says that the profit from this exchange, if it were to occur within an irrevocable trust like ours, is tax deferred, meaning so long as the principal remained in the trust, you would pay no taxes on the gain and you could invest the entire amount. So this is another reason why it's critical to establish your trust prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. The third reason you'd want to set this trust package up is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Now, philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the U.S. dollar lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of the trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV U.S. dollar lump sum, you can give to them through our specially designed gift subtrust. And because the gift is being made through this trust package, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. In addition, the language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you've created a sliding scale so that you can gift to these individuals the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And again, because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, you will have complete control of the post-RV proceeds, meaning you can manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with the probate court. And that could tie your estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax. But the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number two. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually hold in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title and to the trust package, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's an asset protection benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we have established a package of trusts, and I'll give you an example of how this would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. And now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by the master trust, the initial trust you set up prior to the revaluation. Now, how does this protect you? Well, I'll give you an example. Let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. And in that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiffs have no standing to pursue them civilly. So your package of trusts work very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trust prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available exclusively to our clients. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages post-RV. Many of our clients have already expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3, nonprofit, and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with the direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists at our seminar. For the first time, you're going to need to understand some of the more sophisticated tax strategies that are utilized by people of rather substantial means. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation in your exchange for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So this is just another reason to get money out of the banks and at work in other markets. And lastly, the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets in order to avoid that volatility. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and is authorized to manage the subtrusts, one optional gift subtrust, which can at any time be converted to a standard subtrust, and 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of our rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians about a decade ago, we knew that price tag was going to be unaffordable for too many. So by basically deferring the funding of this trust and simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of about $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket cost just to produce and deliver your trust to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. Now, with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust enforced pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust enforced prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for all of the reasons we've stated here. Now, we will be going to a Q&A in a moment, but before we do, and again for our newer callers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider contacting us to get our initial no-obligation informative package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've been working in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in these areas, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for about a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. However, under our system of civil litigation, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. And it's invariably at those precise times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. So again, thanks for listening to the call. We're going to the Q&A in just a moment. I suggest that if you're a newer caller, you have a pen and paper handy. I am going to give you our contact information. I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. Now, the package does contain everything you need should you decide to apply for a trust, pre-RV trust package, but that's entirely up to you. The package includes a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the revaluation in these currencies. You're certainly free to contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. First, this time is reserved exclusively for callers that are interested in our services. Our existing clients can contact us by phone or email if they have service questions. And second, for obvious reasons, in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. you can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon with the exception of the last number. Rather than dialing a 4, you'll dial a 3 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be in our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the Dinar, emails with valuable information may be going out as often as weekly. So let's go to the phones here. Our first caller is from area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Praveen from New York. I think I was reading that the OFAC sanctions was removed in August. Is that the case or no?
No, the sanctions are conditionally in place, having to do with the corruption and purging of the Iranians. After they had considered the removal of those sanctions, there was some upheaval in the government, and some of the people, some of the more radical Shia, wanted the United States military expelled. That's when Trump reaffirmed the fact that the United States was going to remain there to assist the Iraqi government with the removal of the Iranian militias and ultimately the issues of corruption. I do think that the sanctions will be removed shortly, and that's one of the reasons that Al-Kazemi is proceeding with opening up of the corruption files, and the arrests have already begun.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 801. That's 801. Go ahead.
Jim, it's Clay. How are you this morning?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Clay?
No, not too bad. I have a question, though. You said something about in the trust itself that any gain was deferred. So if your Iraqi dinar goes into that trust, or one of the sub-trusts, I assume, it's not taxable until you take the money out? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. What would happen is you establish the trust, you assign the currencies on paper to the master trust. The currencies subsequently revalue. You go to the bank and do your exchange, and you will establish a trust bank account at that bank at the point of the exchange. They will put the U.S. dollars in that trust bank account. Section 643B of the Internal Revenue Code says that the profit from the exchange or sale of a capital asset within an irrevocable trust is tax deferred, which would mean that if you had 10 million dinar and you exchange them for $1, that's $10 million. If the exchange was done outside of a trust, that $10 million would be subject to capital gain. If the exchange was done within the trust, it would be tax deferred. Now, we at Trust Unlimited are, even though that's clearly what the code says, we're talking about too much money to just assume the IRS is going to honor that. So we have gone to the IRS to get a private letter ruling to confirm this. The IRS referred us to the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department declined to respond prior to the event. And as I've said on previous calls, our strategy now is once the dinar reinstitutes in country, we're going to send a letter to the IRS, and we're basically going to say, look, we're going to file suit if we have to. We need and expect and deserve an answer to the tax status because the potential revaluation is imminent. If, for any reason, the IRS were to reject their own section of the code, then we'll let you know that. But if the IRS fails to respond, then what's unfortunately going to happen is we're going to have to pay the ordinary income tax and simultaneously file for a refund citing Sections 980.82 and Section 643B. So we will have prepared that request for a refund to disseminate to all of our clients as soon as the the revaluation occurs.
But as long as the money stays in the irrevocable trust, whether you transfer it from dinar to dollars or whatever the case might be, as long as it stays within the trust, it's deferred from capital gains or regular ordinary income.
That's how the code reads, Section 988E2 and Section 643B. That's how the code reads. Now,
okay, so you can earn capital, you can earn money with it in the trust as long as it stays in the trust. So you got $10 million, you get 10% on that $10 million. Now you got another $1 million. All that money is still in the trust. All of that money is still tax deferred, correct?
No. The $10 million that you enjoyed from the exchange is tax deferred, but the interest and dividends earned on that money, whether it remains in trust or not, is taxable.
Okay.
Just the gain from the transaction is tax deferred. All other interest and earnings is taxable.
So it would behoove a person just to leave their capital principal in the trust and pay tax on just the interest earned on the whatever you can get on that money, right?
Right, because anywhere from 25 to 50% of that money that was not taxed, you can now invest, and you'll have a substantially high. I would argue that the net proceeds would be more than the gross proceeds if you pay taxes on the gain, so you're still better off. Now, there is one potential hitch in all of that, and this is why we've got a lot of work to do once the IRS gets off the dime and tells us what's going on. You could say, well, what happens if I need $100,000 because I want to start a business? If I pull it out, it's taxable. Well, if it's a charitable contribution, of course, it's a neutral transaction. If it's a business capital expenditure, it's a neutral transaction. But if it's potentially triggers a tax, then what you could do is simply borrow using the trust as collateral. Right now, you can borrow money, business money, 4 or 5%. I'd rather pay 4%, which might be deductible, as opposed to as much as 50% in taxes. Now, we'll work out those options when the IRS tells us what the hell's going on. But until they do, we're relying on the code.
Well, the IRS is going to tell you until they know what's best for the IRS. So they might say, yeah, we're going to tax it as capital gains. No, we're going to tax it as ordinary income. But they're not going to tell you till this event happens.
That's true, but either way, we still have to wait on the Treasury Department. Now, if Donald Trump is president, IRS is probably going to say it's not taxable. If Joe Biden's president, he's going to want it all. He's going to put you imagine if you live in California. Here's a great example. You're in California. Worst case scenario, it's ordinary income. What's that mean? It means you're going to pay 39.6% tax. You're going to pay the 5% millionaire surtax, which puts you at 44.5%. You're then going to pay the 13.5% California state tax. That puts you at 58%. If you don't pay the tax and the tax is due, they hit you for 116% of the gain, which means instead of having $10 million, you owe them $1.6 million. That's how ugly it could get.
I see that. I see what you're saying. Well,
why
the thing
we're going to say the IRS, we're going to have no choice. Our thousands of clients are going to have to sue you because we're entitled to an answer.
Well, if Donald Trump is president, I really think that capital gains is going away because that's in his best interest as well, and that money could end up being free money. Actually, I don't think he will be taxable with that.
The fact that he's the president is why October is still a possibility. That's one of the reasons.
Do you have intel saying that they're thinking about doing something like that he's going to pull the trigger on this thing in October? Because that would be to his advantage, definite advantage.
I have common sense in observing the man's actions for 4 years.
Okay. All right. Well,
All right. He's transactional person. Half of the stuff he does, we don't even know what he's doing until it's done.
Well, in my opinion, Trump's got something up his sleeve because he doesn't even appear to be nervous about this election at all. From what I can see.
Well, Trump does suffer from a little bit too much braggadocio. I mean, if I had to find one fault with him, he'll say things like, "It's never been better before. I can tell you that. Next year's going to be the best year in our history." Even if he believes all that, I don't know whether I'd run out there and say those things. But that's just the nature of the beast, Winston Churchill had a great line. He said, "Some people refer to my opponent as a bull in a china shop." He said, "My opponent is a bull that walks around with his own china shop just to break stuff up." And that's kind of who Trump is.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I can appreciate the braggadocios. But what I've always felt like, though, is that Donald Trump has got something else going on, and this is just a cover. I mean, look the way he's pulling all these countries together. It seems like they're all falling in line, just falling in line.
Well,
okay, the last question I have. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, the other thing he said the other day, he said that Iran and China can't wait to make a deal with me. They're going to be on the phone with me the day after the election. So, again, even if that's true, I just don't know whether I would say it. But, the guy's been a winner all of his life. He survived the real estate crash of the 80s. He survived the crash of 2008. He just always ends up, on top. And of course, if you read his book, one of his favorite lines from Sun Tzu is the best way to succeed is to be underestimated by your opponent. And I just have a feeling that October is going to be really ugly for the Democrats.
Interesting. Last question, Jim. If this thing does happen and it goes 1-1 or 2-1 or whatever it is, and forgive my ignorance, but where's all this money going to come from? You keep saying we're looking at 6 to 8 million millionaires. That's a lot of money. I mean, for even the amount of dinar that I'm holding, where's all that money going to come from?
The money is coming from the liberation deal that the United States struck with Iraq back in 2003. They've got oil credits. They have right of first refusal for all kinds of projects. What they're going to do is they're going to basically, the U.S. Treasury is going to purchase our currencies for what the dinar will be worth based on Basel III compliance. They're then going to destroy that currency. They're going to digitize it, and then they're going to go to Iraq, and they're going to utilize that currency to do whatever they want to do.
Oh, okay. So, and of course, the U.S. is holding $35 billion worth of their currency, which is in trillions now.
Well, it's not. They can't have trillions. There's not that the money supply. That my understanding is they have about $3 trillion. I don't know whether that's true or not. But $3 trillion turns into $10 trillion U.S. dollars, which basically erases half of our deficit.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, I was concerned about that. I'm thinking that Iraq is holding off on this revaluation because they're thinking, where the hell are we going to get all this money to pay all these people? But you're saying that's not the case. You're saying that the U.S. government's going to be paying us.
Well, not just that. Remember, their currency's increased in value. Their currency, the U.S. dollar is the number one reserve currency in the world. A dinar today is worth about 1/1100th of a penny. If the dinar then becomes worth $3.50 against the U.S. dollar, then their currency has increased so much in value that the wealth of the nation is expressed by that. In other words, because of all of the underlying wealth of the country, the oil, the mining, all of that stuff. So, the value of their currency is a reflection of the wealth of the country.
Okay.
Remember, the value of their currency now is not based on the underlying wealth of the country. It's based on the program rate established by the IMF with the removal of Saddam Hussein. It does not reflect the wealth of the country. So where's that money coming from? It's coming from the wealth of the country, which will be accurately reflected by the revalued, the Forex, when it hits the Forex, when it's revalued.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, Jim. Well, thanks for answering my questions, my friend. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Take care, Clay. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. I'm taking a wild guess. That's Les.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Jim. What's up?
What's up, my friend?
I just got a couple questions. Hope everything's all right. Hey, you haven't said anything about your daughter. How's she making out since that bad spill earlier this year? She okay?
Well, there was a car accident and there was a hurricane. Which one?
The last one was the hurricane, right?
Yeah. She she lost everything. The insurance covered most of it. She just had to get herself another place.
Okay, all right, and she's probably got that by now. Great.
Yeah. So thanks for asking, but yeah, she's good.
Great. All right. So, was thinking with the things going on in Iraq and the people being arrested and they're working their way from the top down, because there was an article saying something about the auctions were seized over the weekend, or was it Friday or Saturday? Said something about the auctions were seized. Had you heard anything about that?
Yeah. I considered talking about that, but there's some unresolved issues there, and we're getting into some real technical issues about money supply and all of that. And but you're right. The problem is that the corrupt officials are just trying to milk this puppy for as long as they can for whatever they can get, and they're not going to voluntarily stop what they're doing. They're going to have to be stopped, and that's basically what's going on. What they were doing is, well, they had fraudulent arrangements where they were creating dummy companies, and they were allegedly trading goods and services. And they were getting the U.S. dollar. They were getting the provisional currency out of the country, and they want the provisional currency out of the country because they're working out these under-the-table contracts. So when the currency revalues, they can take advantage of the exchange rate, as a non-Iraqi national. So it's complicated, but it's the same old scam. It's money laundering. It's everything.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And my next question is regarding the seminar, the investment after the RV. Have you gotten any further information regarding a meeting? And if so, how many can reside in one place at one time?
That's what we had initial discussions with Disney just to get an idea of when we needed to contact them, how early we had to, what we needed to do to get the room space, if on site if we could. But now with the COVID thing, it's too fluid, so we basically decided we're just going to have to wait till the last second and try to work it all out because, the CDC keeps going back and forth on what we should and shouldn't do, so we're just going to have to wait to see where we are when this happens. Now, remember, 2 months ago, our thing was, well, we're probably going to just do a DVD and put it up on the website. The Disney thing is off. But since then, Disney is opened, and now the CDC's back and forth. So, like I said, it's fluid, so we're just going to have to wait till the last second and see what the landscape looks like then.
All right. Can you give a synopsis of what will be covered at that meeting?
Well, yeah, we'll talk about the management and funding of the trust. We'll have our tax people there. We'll have our investment advisors there. We'll certainly be doing Q&As. We'll probably have it'll probably be a 2-night, 3-day thing where, we'll have seminars day one in the afternoon. People will come in, they'll check in. We'll have seminar in the afternoon. The second day, we'll have seminars on and off all day. The third day, we'll have seminar meetings in the morning, and we'll probably close after lunch. And then probably half the people will stay in Disney for a while, half will go home.
Okay, so the seminars that you have, regardless of how many, it will be covering the same material more than once or different material each setting?
Each day will be different stuff.
Got it.
And we'll probably do a DVD of it because we do have clients that can't travel or just don't want to travel. And a lot of our clients, not a lot, but I would say 15 to 20% of our clients aren't even American citizens. They're all over the planet, so they're not going to, why would someone in Australia come all the way to Disney when they can get a DVD, unless they say, "Ah, to heck with it, I'm just going to take the whole family. We're going to stay there for a week." You know.
Exactly. There you go. That's why they would.
That's what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on bringing the whole family for after the last day of the seminar is when my family's going to start rolling in, and we're just going to hang for a week.
Okay. All righty. Great. Well, I'm finished. Say hi to the professor, and have a great day, man.
Yes, sir. Take care, Lee.
Thanks, Jim. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Les was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the call. I hope that our newer callers will contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. Once again, the package includes everything you need should you decide to proceed with the establishment of a trust. But you can contact us if you have any further questions. There will be no consultation fee. We'll have our next call next Wednesday as usual. Certainly if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks again for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye.